Hello, I'm here to finally give my part two of the Future History Project, week 2, part 2. These are going to be the last 2 stories. In my first video earlier in the week, I talked about I think it was about 4 days ago, I talked about the first 3 stories. Great week on the first 3 stories. I really enjoyed those stories. One of them was not great. I was indifferent about the story. It was True Love, I believe, was the name of the story, and I was not a big fan of that story. I thought it was okay. It was well simpler than what I'm used to with Asimov, and while simple is fine, I don't think it helped that story at all. But we're still reading from The Complete Robot. So we read, this is about stories 9 and 10 that we've read. The stories are called Victory Unintentional and Stranger in Paradise. Man, 2 stories couldn't be any more different. Their writing style seemed way different. Of course, they were 32 years apart, as Victory Unintentional was written in 1942 and was released in Super Science Stories in August of 1942. Stranger in Paradise was If magazine, Worlds of Science Fiction. I don't know anything about the magazine. That is one of the science fiction magazines I've never read a story from. Now, the Super Science Stories I love. I've read some of those from archive.org, and they are they're great. I mean, they put out some amazing stories, and I'm glad somebody eventually decided to publish this story, because it was turned down a few times. And I know John W. Campbell didn't want to publish it. This is all on Shawn D Standfast's channel as well. And again, if you're watching me and you haven't watched him, go watch him. Go watch him first, actually. He is much better at this than I am. He knows his science fiction. He knows his Asimov. So yeah, go watch his stuff before you watch mine. Starting next week. But yeah, Victory International was an almost comedic science fiction story. It was so tongue-in-cheek, I would almost call it comedic. Maybe not exactly comedic, because I'm not sure how much of it was meant as comedy, but I do believe that a lot of this was tongue-in-cheek. This is a story about 3 robots built by humans that live on Ganymede, which is, I believe they said it was a satellite of Jupiter, and one of Jupiter's moons, and they were sent to find out if the inhabitants of Jupiter, who were the, hold on a second, let me see if I can remember their name, their names again. Once I find the story, Victory Unintentional, there it is. The Jovians. To find out if the Jovians have force field technology. Because if the Jovians have force field technology, they are so aggressive that they're very dangerous, and they will do their best to take over Ganymede and to destroy everything on it. The Jovians are extremely aggressive, hostile, and these robots, they go and they land on the planet, and you can tell right from the beginning these robots are afraid of nothing. It says they're built to be invulnerable. They give the 3 chemicals in metal composition that they're built from, and it supposedly makes them indestructible. So what it does is it turns them into these hilarious little squat short robots that look nothing like humans. And one of them actually, they're known as ZZ1, ZZ2, ZZ3. ZZ1 is actually a little simpler than the rest, because he was built before the rest, and his technology isn't quite the same. So his programming is a little simpler, and this causes some really serious comedic moments in this story. I laughed out loud multiple times at that robot. I laughed out loud multiple times at this story. So they get there and they're threatened by the Jovians. They just take it in stride. They know the Jovians can't destroy them, no matter how hard they try. And what does it matter if they do? They're robots, you know. So we're looking at it maybe a Data thing here. Data from Star Trek: The Next Generation. So you know, they want to be shown around. They want to find out soon, or they want to find out pretty quickly whether these Jovians have force field technology. Come to find out they do. But before that happens, there are some very comedic things that happen. One of them happens in an ammonia pool. I laughed out loud at that part. I think Becky thought I was crazy. We were laying in bed. I was actually reading that, and I started laughing, and I think she thought I was crazy. But I had such a good time with this story. I think this was my favorite story of this week, not because it was the best written. Matter of fact, it was probably the worst written of all the stories that I read this week, but it was still just so much fun and completely different than what I'm used to with Isaac Asimov. I am so glad I read it, though. I know it's a sequel, and they're the original story I don't have yet, but I will be reading that this week. I want to see what that's all about. I don't know if it's going to be as comedic as this one was, but you know, as humorous, probably not. But I don't know. We'll see. It was written the year before. But yeah, and then they find out that yes, they do have force field technology, and what's funny is these robots tell them that they love heat, you know. Heat, and this one goes diving in an ammonia pool. They're like, but isn't that going to kill you? No, it's not going to kill us. But come to find out at the very end of the story, well, throughout the entire story, the Jovians are telling them we're going to invade. They keep calling them vermin because I'll tell you why in a minute. They keep calling them vermin, which is what they call humans who are on Ganymede. And then these robots keep doing things that a human could never live through. Kind of like, you know, like I said, diving in the ammonia pool, getting in this extreme heat that a human couldn't live through, getting bitten by an animal that would have destroyed a human, and they come away unscathed. Funny stuff, but what I loved about it was the ending. I mean, the ending just made it. These Jovians, they go and get their leader, or they go to get their leader, and then they come back and they're like, okay, we're not going to invade. This entire time, the robots had forgotten to tell them that they were human, or that they were not human. So, while that may be sort of a cop-out, I think it goes perfectly with the humorous side of the story, and it solidly cements it as comedy. And I had a great time with this story. They're not going to, they say they are not going to invade because there is no way that we're going to, or there is no way that we're going to be able to invade and win in here on your planet, because they thought that these robots were human, and these robots were indestructible. So, great story. I didn't do it justice with my explanation, but I did enjoy the story a whole lot, and I say you should go read this. I know John W. Campbell did not like it, did not like the story. But I'm glad somebody took it and ran with it. And the second story is one that I didn't care for, really. I mean, I know Shawn said he enjoyed it. I Maybe I didn't care for it because it does not exactly belong in the future history. It seems to be another universe that it was written in. Still, very well written. It just wasn't my. It isn't the Asimov that I really love, but it's about two brothers. Well, this is about, I think, 500 years in the future, and this is about two brothers who live in a post-apocalyptic sort of New York, kind of a disaster happened, and the family dynamic is completely gone, which I found very interesting. I like that aspect of the story. These are brothers that they don't really say they're exactly twins, but that they look very much alike. And but in this, with the family dynamic gone, this almost seems to be, by these brothers, this seems to be shame. There seems to be shame involved in being brothers, two brothers with the same parents. Now, I found that part of the story extremely interesting. One of the brothers is a homologist. The other brother is someone who works with autistic children. So that was a cool part as well, because we get to learn. You know, it hadn't been that long since autism had been discovered, and things like that. And he is trying to come up with a cure for autism. And while there are people in the world who think that there is a cure for autism and that it's already known, and that some I can't remember her name, Melissa McCarthy, came up with it, that she cured her son of autism. Don't believe that shit. It is ridiculous. It didn't happen. She learned to live with her son's autism, and he got better due to some of the things she did, but it's not a cure. Okay. Becky works with autistic children. Becky's mother works with autistic children. Don't believe that crap. It is untrue, and change the channel if you see anything about that. And don't believe a word of it. But then they start talking about a Mercury project. They want to send a robot to Mercury to study Mercury, and so we can see from sort of the same senses that the robot sees. They want to build an almost human brain and put it inside, but a human brain that works much faster. Because the human brain, while it can process many things, it processes kind of slow, you know. So that's the reason they want the homologist to work on it and things like that. But come to find out, they do this, and I found the ending to be so uninteresting. You know, as the robot lands and you know, tells a little about what it's seeing and things like that, and the story just didn't stick with me much. It was not something I enjoyed that much. Hopefully this is the only story like it. If it's not, it's no big deal, but the story was a little long. The story was also a little long. I believe this may be the longest story we read yet, and the length, it wasn't earned, but I wish, actually, I think this would make a better novel than a short story. It was put into chapters. I think Asimov would have done much better to make this a novel than to make it a short story. And I would read that novel. I just don't think it was a very effective short story at all. You know, and that's my opinion. And take it or leave it. I still say read it. I mean, it is Asimov, and it is an interesting story. I like to see what he thought of autism and what autism was and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, those are the two stories. I'm not going to say anything else about the second story. Like I said, it didn't stick with me that much. I just didn't care that much for it. I may go back and read certain parts of it because some of it didn't stick with me much. But for now, I'm not going to worry too much about that. and this is the last you'll hear me talk of it probably. But that first story, that was Victory Unintentional, I think I will call that my favorite video of the week, or favorite story of the week. Maybe. This was a good week, despite having a story in there I just didn't care much for at all. But other than that, great week. I'm enjoying these Isaac Asimov stories. Loving them. I don't have a list of what we're going to read next week, but I will have a video up on Wednesday. That is with the first 3 stories. Wednesday, possibly Thursday, but it will be up this week. So I'll talk to you then. See ya.